Good evening, everyone. Joe, are you there?
I think he may have stepped away. I may have stepped away for 1 second. There he is.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Good evening, Professor.
Hi, Dr. Salim.
How are you? Excited?
Good evening, Professor.
Nice to see you all.
How's it going, everyone?
Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Looking forward to the presentations.
Likewise. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that it was somewhat late notice and pulling it all together. So really appreciate
great to
being
see
able to
our students delivering the projects. I do apologize for I'll have to go out and come back in. I'll do that very quietly. I'll be in this meeting. I assure you. How have you been, Joe?
I've been very well. How about yourself?
It's just been absolutely crazy. I thought everyone working from home would be more relaxed, but we're double timing it.
Isn't it amazing? What I thought was a fast pace in a face-to-face environment, how intense it is actually remotely. So it's yeah.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
Good morning, or actually, it's good afternoon.
Good evening.
For you. It's good to see
How are you?
Thank you for agreeing to be on our panel in January.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to it. How have you been?
Very well, although it's very cold here. It's like in the 20s.
Oh, it's in the 20s Celsius here.
Thank you for agreeing to be on our panel in January.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to it. Oh, our conversations.
How have you been? Oh, it's a little very well, although it's very cold here.
So is someone streaming the YouTube?
Yeah, I think so. Someone's streaming to YouTube. Yeah.
So make sure you mute the YouTube link in order. Otherwise, we'll get a feedback of everything that we're that we're saying.
So happy presenting, everyone. As I mentioned, I apologize for having to step out, and I will quietly step back in without interrupting anything. All right. See you soon.
That's great. Thank you. Well, we're at 10:02 Eastern Time, and so let's get started here. So let me just start off with a few words of welcome. Curtis, thank you so much for showing up. Karen, thanks so much. Shirin, thank you for being here as well. Art, I see that Art is here, one of our project sponsors in Bahrain. Thank you so much for being here as well. And then welcome to all of the AUS students. Thank you so much for participating in this over the course of the fall semester, and of course the WPI students who've had to tolerate me since late summer. So for all of that, a great big welcome. This is one of my favorite days of the entire of each semester. It's a celebration of all of the hard work that has gone into really challenging projects that don't have clear answers, right? I mean, that's what the great thing about project-based learning is, the complexity and the opportunity to solve challenging problems that have no clear answer. And so getting to watch you work through these problems and developing solutions at times that are very frustrating to try to overcome. I always look forward to this day because first, it seems like a miracle, but when we get to this day, it seems like regardless of where you were even yesterday, by the time you get to today, things have largely worked out. And as everyone will get to see that based on the quality of your work, you'll get to see these creative solutions and wonderful presentations. So with all of that, I just would like to take a second because, we're broadcasting this for YouTube Live. I've posted it on my LinkedIn channels. I hope that you've shared LinkedIn and Facebook. I hope that you've shared it with other people as well. So I know that there's some people that are watching this that are a little bit unfamiliar with probably what is actually going on. And I just would like to address you all so you know what it is that you're actually watching. So WPI, a couple of different things. WPI puts project-based learning really squarely at the center of its curriculum. And so there are a series of although project work is a part of all courses at WPI, there are 3 major projects that students have to complete to finish. And what you're watching is the presentation of the interdisciplinary projects that are in the curriculum. As part of that, we have a really large global network of project centers where students can elect to do projects in places in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, South America, Asia, and North America. And these students had elected to go to the United Arab Emirates to complete project work with our partner institution, the American University of Sharjah. Unfortunately, as everyone knows and needs no real need to repeat, the global pandemic has disrupted a lot of plans. And so, real credit to the students that you're about to watch presentations from, they're able to regroup, work remotely, as hard or harder than they might work on the ground in the UAE. And the same goes for our American University of Sharjah students committing to the project to work collaboratively, remotely, to then push these projects through to the finish line. And so with all of that said, I just would like to welcome you all and to enjoy the next couple of hours of presentations, all starting with the team Third Eye. Third Eye, you guys ready?
Yes.
Excellent. It's all yours.
I want to make sure if my screen is visible.
It is.
Okay, awesome.
Great.
So, hey everyone. So welcome to Third Eye's IQB presentation. We are Team Third Eye, and our tagline goes by Third Eye looks beyond the obvious with clear perception and shows what is true. And here's our team. Hey everyone, my name is Kushal Gandhi and I'm currently a junior. I'm majoring in robotics engineering.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Akul. I'm an aeronautical major.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suryansh Goel, and I'm a computer science major.
So our project is part of Voices Sandbox Project Center, which is newly launched by Innovation and Entrepreneurship Department at WPI. It is an incubator-like project center where students can come in and work on their personal or business ideas as well and earn the academic credits for the same.
So before starting, I would like to give you a brief background of the disease that we are going to talk about, which is called coronary artery disease and its nature, as well as we will be giving you some statistics related to that. So what are CAD and ASCVD? So CAD stands for coronary artery disease, and ASCVD is a condition for CAD, which is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And to sum it up, I would like to talk about how it develops. So it develops due to deposition of fatty streaks or plaque on the endothelial lining or the inner lining of the coronary arteries, and it happens to everyone. So when this is happening, it is a slowly progressive disease, and it develops into an obstruction where the blood flow is restricted, and so the heart muscles are deprived of oxygenated blood. This is a condition called as atherosclerosis, and it progresses into heart attacks when the heart muscles are deprived of oxygen, and so it ends up with heart attacks. Yeah. So as I've already talked that this is a progressive disease and it starts in the early 20s. It becomes obstructive and prevalent in the 50s. And this is the time when the patient experiences chest pain as well as heart attacks. And while this is happening, it takes a decades of time to progress to this stage. And this happens unknowingly to the patient. They do not have any knowledge about that. And it has a long onset time for symptoms. So it eventually ends with a heart attack. And while this is happening, the heart muscles are being damaged. And since we all know that once a heart muscle is damaged, it cannot be grown back. So this is clearly an irreversible process. And since it takes a lot of progression, there is also misperception of symptoms with it. As 40% of the time, it is often misperceived into some light other medical condition. For example, if there is tightness in the bottom of the chest, then it can be perceived as indigestion in the stomach, and the patient generally consumes antacids for that. But in the reality, it is just a misperceived heart attack. And the similar thing, and a similar thing happens when there is tightness in the top of the chest, which is often perceived as pain in the neck or shoulders, and the patient consumes painkillers for that. But again, in the reality, it is just a misperceived heart attack.
From our interviews, which we've conducted with medical professionals, we identified a number of long onset diseases, such as coronary artery disease, myocardial infarction, SIDS, which stands for sudden infant death syndrome, as well as hypertension. We assessed the impact of these diseases on the basis of factors such as the number of cases in the US, how accessible resources are, the mortality rate, the average cost spent by the medical industry on that disease per year, as well as the future increment rate, the predicted future increment rate. We gave each of these factors a weight and conducted a weighted analysis and made an impact score for each of the diseases. And from this, we judged CAD to be the most impactful. Some CAD specific statistics are that it costs the US medical industry an average of $200 billion. And by 2030, this is expected to rise to $800 billion. Additionally, it is the top killer in the US with an annual caseload of around 600,000 deaths. So this brings up the question, why are we losing so many lives due to CVD? And the answer is simple. It's because people are not dying of other diseases. When cardiovascular diseases are not at the top of the list, other diseases such as pneumonia and tuberculosis have been. But when proper treatment for those diseases was found, their numbers diminished and deaths due to CVD increased again. So this shows that it is an extremely significant thing to be aware of.
Now we are going to cover some of the problems that we've identified in the current cardiac health industry and how we are going to address that. So the problems that we've identified are patient-driven system. It is more treatment-based and less preventive-based. Current risk analysis system, problem with the frequency of data collection, EMRs, and costs and readmission. So story time. So let's meet a doctor and a patient in the story. And here it goes. So it starts when the patient actually feels something in their body, which is often a heart attack or chest pain, which is known as angina. And the patient approaches the doctor. So the monitoring starts when the patient reports to the doctor, and the doctor basically tells the patient to have a check-in system for a weekly or a bi-weekly period, or it can go to months as well. It depends on the condition of the patient. And during the check-ins, the doctor asks some kind of questions to the patient, such as are they having any chest pain, or do they feel anything abnormal in their body? And so the treatment is solely based on the patient's response, which we all know is subjective, as well as variably reliable, because first of all, the patient is not a trained cardiovascular professional who has no knowledge about the disease, its treatment, as well as its related conducts. And so the patient's response will not be accurate. Also, there is another problem of lack of medical compliance, since they do not understand the severity of the disease. And so this shows that this is clearly a patient-driven system. And coming to that, since a lot of damage has already been done on their body, and the heart muscles cannot be grown back because the change is irreversible, the current system is more treatment based and less prevention based, because the phase for prevention has already been gone away. And so the patients are treated on prescriptions and medicines. And if necessary, they have further interventions and surgeries performed on them. But the thing is, this is only going to delay the time between the condition they are suffering and their death. And this condition only gets worse from here.
So this is the basic, this is the flowchart of basic guidelines which every primary care physicians and cardiovascular professional follows. For example, if a patient approaches a doctor with some pain in the chest or a shortness of breath, then the first thing that the doctor will do is they will carry out a risk assessment on the patient. They'll measure various risk factors such as age, gender, blood pressure, and cholesterol level, in order to categorize the patients into different risk categories. For example, if a person from age group 40 to 75 comes to a patient, then doctor will conduct the risk analysis and then categorize the patient into 4 different categories: low risk, borderline, intermediate, and high risk. But again, there are not much preventative actions taken by the doctor here. The only thing that doctor will do is will carry out a risk discussion and start a statin therapy, and not much prevention actions are taken to restrict a patient to move to a higher risk category than the patient is already at. The another major flaw in the industry right now is that the risk analysis system is done through risk calculators by measuring different factors such as age, gender, blood pressure, cholesterol level, if they have diabetes or not, and their smoking habits. But the main problem is that these risk calculators are only 50% accurate, which means that 50% of the time, if patient is categorized as low risk, there's a huge possibility that patient is actually at a higher risk and not receiving the medical treatment and care that the patient should receive. And Suryansh has mentioned that it is a patient-driven system currently, because of which doctors are forced to take decisions on snapshot-based data, which means in order to classify the patient, the condition of the patient, if it is worsening or deteriorating, the doctors have to wait for more number of weeks in order to collect more data to classify the patient's condition. Which means that waiting for more number of weeks awaits for more delay and more damage, and hence the condition will only deteriorate because it's an irreversible process. On the other hand, if we had continuous data collection techniques, then the condition of the patient could be classified in some days only, as we can see here in the chart. In initial days, we can classify the condition of the patient that it's deteriorating.
We also identified problems with the current EMR system. EMR stands for Electronic Medical Records. These are the natural progression from paper records and charts for doctors, and EMRs are unique to medical institutions. This means that there is no nationally integrated system and there is no transfer of data between institutions. A patient could go to get a CAT scan done at one hospital, and the next week, if they need to be rushed somewhere else, that CAT scan data will not be accessible by them at the second hospital, most likely. There's also no current instance of automation that integrates the previously mentioned risk score with these EMRs. EMRs only contain hard data. Finally, the last theme of problems we identified is the cost. Going back to our earlier question of why CADs is so expensive, it's that a majority of the costs arise from treatment due to patients having to come in for repeated interventions and medications. So majority of the money is spent on treatment and not prevention. This cycle of treatment, combined with the irreversible nature of CAD, means that patients again and again keep going to hospitals, building that vicious cycle. So this drives up the rate of readmissions for hospitals, which is a critical factor. And if it gets too high, it can threaten federal funding.
So the solution that we've come up with is a web application which will be implementing a more accurate and robust risk analysis system than the current one. It also is powered with EMR integration, continual monitoring, and alert feature. So currently the risk factors taken into account are just age, gender, blood pressure, systolic, diastolic, cholesterol levels, and smoking habits. But we plan to integrate more number of risk factors such as lifestyle and environmental factors, as well as factors from wearable devices such as EKG, as well as from the phones such as facial characteristics, and combine them with the concepts of AI and come up with a risk analysis system which will be more accurate as it is taking into account increased number of risk factors which relate to the heart condition.
Conclusions from our technology will be integrated with the previously mentioned EMRs and be accessible across all healthcare institutions that adopt our technology.
Our risk analysis system will incorporate more frequent sampling rate in order to capture data more continuously, to classify the condition of the patient as early as possible, and taking the necessary steps required to treat the patient or prevent the patient from moving to a higher category as early as possible. Our technology will also have a built-in alerting system. If the conclusion is made from our technology which requires immediate medical attention, then the nearest healthcare provider would be alerted based on location tracking. The target customers that we have identified for our technologies are cardiovascular healthcare providers and insurance companies as well. We'll be distributing our product to healthcare providers and insurance companies first, and then they would be recommending our product to the end users, which are patients who lies in the age group of 40 to 75 and are categorized into borderline or intermediate risk group. Now here comes the big question: why will our customers pay for our idea? Healthcare institutions and insurance companies will pay for Third Eye software solution to save ton of money that would otherwise have been spent in unnecessary interventions and increased rate of readmissions, which eventually threatens their federal funding. So special thanks to our advisors, Mr. Joseph Duran and Mr. Curtis Abel, and a big thanks to Innovation and Entrepreneurship Department as well as Nectar's WPI to give us constant support through our journey of ID 2050, IQP, and summer research. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thanks, guys. All right, let me open this up to questions. So that's questions. If you're watching via YouTube, I'll monitor the chat and I'll ask it to our team here. But those of us here in the Zoom meeting room, so let's open it up. Does anybody have any questions for the team?
I have a couple. This is amazing. This is wonderful. And I can definitely see the cost savings part of it by early alerts and being proactive. When this information is shared over systems from one hospital to another, have you taken into account all the HIPAA regulations?
No, we haven't looked into that. So throughout our journey until now, we have mainly focused on the problem and need assessment part.
Yes.
In order to do more research on solution, that's our next steps actually.
Yeah,
so
that would be a great next step. And then the second question, personally, have the three of you learned a lot and maybe modified your diets or your healthcare routines? Because this is very scary when you hear all this data and all these statistics.
Well, definitely, yes. We have started working out a lot after studying all these. We have almost become doctors, to be honest. We are planning to leave our computer science career very soon.
Very good. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to chime in here. Karen, man, you hit the nail on the head, man, in terms of the value of what this team is doing. First of all, let me just congratulate the entire team. That you guys crushed it. Identified a really important problem. So from a value perspective, I see there's a ton of opportunity, particularly with kind of where Karen was going with is behavioral change. So you can give a risk factor, but is that really going to drive behavior? And so I think there's a ton of ways to think about what should that measurement be? Should it be percent blockage? Will that drive better behavior than risk factor? And so and we have talked about this before, but it would be great to just comment a little bit in terms of your thoughts about types of interventions. And I think it gets kind of back to Karen's question about has that changed your behavior at all?
Yep. Yes, so our solution part doesn't only limit to detection of the opportunities where we can prevent the disease, but also to create some interventions in order to change the behaviors, in order to take action on the prevention that we just detected, because only passing the information to the doctors that we can prevent the disease is not enough to solve the entire problem. But definitely manipulating the thoughts of end users in order to take actions to do something, for example, work out more, start hitting the gym more, change their dietary behaviors. I think that is more necessary in order to solve the entire problem of losing less lives due to this disease. And that definitely opens up scope to more solution and widen our point of view, I guess. And it definitely requires more research on the solution part itself.
Thanks, Kushal. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for our team before I ask mine? All right, so if you look at where we're ending here on this journey, I mean, you guys are, well, the first startup team to come through the I&E Center, that the Foisey Sandbox that Curtis and I have been working on. And if we look back, this required a lot of legwork to even get to the point where you could start your IQP. So if you look back to last year and you think about where you are now, I mean, what are some of the most surprising twists and turns that it's taken? That's kind of part one. And part two is, are you guys still fired up enough to carry this on beyond, where you're at after all of the tears and yelling? And no, I'm kidding. But
I think Kushal can definitely answer the second one, because that's where the team drive comes from. But for the first one, yes, we've had some major iterations. We actually, before this, one of the key ones that we were looking at was 4D flow. That was the biggest change for us. So centering from 4D flow to CAD and risk assessment and prevention, that was a massive change.
Yes, so we have gone through a number of pivots to reach to this point. So we were, as Akul said, that we are focusing on 4D flow, which is part of medical imaging. So we wanted to improve the medical imaging. But then again, doing the customer discovery process through iCorp, we done a lot of interviews, and because of which we came to know that the real problem is not within the imaging, but it is not detecting the chances earlier. And that's where the real issue comes in. And also, yes, definitely, we are still fired up to convert this IQP into MQP to actually now start the prototyping, which we have waited long for. So that includes our next step, starting the engineering design process and continue with the customer discovery and validation process.
Well, that's awesome, and best of luck, moving forward. Congrats, guys. Excellent job.
Thank you.
All right, moving along to the Open Innovation team.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. Our project is titled The Development of Open Innovation Networks at WPI and AUS. My name is Colin Wandell. I'm currently a third-year chemical engineering major from WPI.
My name is Archie Milligan. I'm currently a third-year robotics engineering major from WPI.
My name is Mustafa Shahada, and I'm a third-year mechanical engineering student from WPI.
My name is Akchinia Chancho. I'm a second-year computer science student at AUS.
And my name is Mohammed Al-Najjar. I'm a third-year industrial engineering student at AUS.
My name is Hassan Khan, and I'm a third-year chemical engineering student at AUS.
So just a brief overview of our project. We're first going to go into some background, and then our design thinking process, and then some results and prototype, and finally our conclusions and recommendations. So the overall problem that our team focused on our research on and set out to solve is that despite open innovation being a lucrative strategy of development, there are many uncertainties surrounding the creation of new university-based OI networks that make them very complicated to implement. So after analyzing the problem, we outlined a couple of research objectives we needed to accomplish. The first one is to understand the various barriers impeding the implementation of new open innovation networks and the creation of new nodes in already existing networks. And the second is to visualize how an open innovation network could take form at WPI and the American University of Sharjah. To solve our problem and complete our research objectives, we first conducted extensive background research in the form of a literature review. Before explaining what open innovation is, it's important to understand what innovation actually is. The process of innovation can be described as the development of new ideas or the introduction of new technologies into the marketplace. There are various forms of innovation models, such as the linear model, Silicon Valley model, and disruptive innovation model. Each of those have their pros and cons, but an alternative method to these traditional forms is open innovation. And open innovation is just open collaboration between different entities where anyone can work on a project and innovate openly without being restricted to the walls of the company. Internal and external ideas can flow in and out of the company to help increase profits. And as shown in the diagram, the blue circle being an internal idea and the gray one being an external idea can flow into the company and together can produce stronger and more profitable ideas for the market. Also, it's important to understand the open innovation entities or the agents that are actually involved in open innovation endeavors. The main ones are large corporations, which are companies with a minimum of 250 employees, small and medium-sized enterprises, which are companies with less than 250 employees, government institutions, and academic institutions. Each of these entities can work together on any open innovation projects. When it comes to open collaboration with these entities, there's intellectual property involved, which is any creation produced by the human mind. Some of the most common types of intellectual property are patents, copyright laws, and trade secrets. These help determine and negotiate who gets what IP rights.
So with the background research complete, it was time for our team to begin formulating our design thinking process. There are 4 key phases to our design thinking process. The first is the discovery phase, where our team conducted case study interviews, a survey, and interviews with faculty in order to collect data. The second phase was the ideation phase, where our team brainstormed the different criteria that our prototype would need to solve. The third phase was the prototype phase, where our team decided on the design that our prototype would take and the actual logistics to its implementation. And the fourth phase, the feedback phase, was where our team planned out how we would solicit feedback on our proposed design. For the discovery phase, our team employed various methods of data collection to learn more about open innovation.
We conducted our discovery phase with the objective of seeking data from 3 different sources. Firstly, we wanted to learn more about the existing models of open innovation. To accomplish this, we sought out organizations currently participating in open innovation and scheduled a recorded interview with each entity we found. Next, we wanted to gauge the current knowledge of OI at WPI and the AUS. For this, we sent out a survey to both schools through Qualtrics to allow for easier data analysis. And finally, we wanted to find out what open innovation resources are currently available to students. For this phase, we scheduled another recorded interview with Curtis Abel, the Executive Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, to learn about the inner workings of the programs in the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Department. During our discovery phase, we interviewed representatives from 4 different agents of open innovation. Our first agent was the MBTA, the Mass Bay Transportation Agency, as we are interested in their innovation proposal program, where users of the MBTA can submit their innovative solutions to problems they notice in the MBTA's services. This was a good example of open innovation, as the proposal portal was open to anyone who wanted to submit an idea. And this program has been met with the success of in the form of several successful project proposals, including an innovation to melt snow off of the steps to trains to increase safety in the winter. However, we found that since all the innovation proposals ended up with the same people, some proposals might not be pursued to their fullest. Next, we interviewed Spring Theory, a small company focused around facilitating collaboration between corporations and academia. This is a great example of OI, as it often involves student-led teams and corporations collaborating on various projects, and exhibits a desire to work with student groups as opposed to just faculty members. Spring Theory has worked with many universities, including Cornell, Columbia, USC, and Northwestern, to bring sponsored projects to their curriculums. However, one downside we saw was that they had slightly less network functionality, as often they have to reach out to organizations to find collaborators as opposed to having companies and universities reaching out to them in the first place.
The third case study interview that we conducted was with the City of Worcester. Now, while the City of Worcester performed the least open innovation endeavors, the Office of Urban Innovation still demonstrated to us that government departments can prioritize transparency through things like their open data portal, which gives any individual access to all the data that the City of Worcester has. The interview with the City of Worcester also highlighted how the community can be a possible benefactor of open innovation projects. One successful project the City of Worcester has actually sponsored was to construct the wooden bridge in Worcester's Elm Park near WPI with WPI civil engineering students. The fourth organization we conducted an interview with was Honeywell, a large corporate firm. This interview gave our team valuable insight into how a large firm handles open innovation. Honeywell has a lot of experience working with different companies and academia on a variety of cutting-edge research. This interview allowed for our team to get an inside look at some of the considerations large firms might make before beginning an open innovation endeavor, like how intellectual properties must be handled and how to make the most of a collaboration effort.
To finish investigating each entity into open innovation, we spoke with Professor Dorvan and interviewed Curtis Abel, the Director of Innovation Entrepreneurship at WPI. They provided us with a lot of information about current open innovation practices at WPI. These included IQP, MQP, where groups of students like ourselves will work on a project alongside a sponsor to find an innovative solution to a problem. The Foisey Sandbox IQP Center, where students can tackle personal projects and develop them into a business, patent, or just develop their research, is also a great resource. There's also the winter session, where students can come to the campus with the sole purpose of exploring WPI's innovation resources to spark new ideas or solutions to problems they didn't even know they had. And lastly, WPI offers innovation challenges, where students can innovate solutions to problems posed to them by the university. Recently, WPI offered a challenge focused around the COVID-19 pandemic, where students can propose different innovative ways to help combat this disease. However, after surveying data from the students at WPI and the AUS, it became apparent that these resources aren't widely used or advertised to the student bodies.
So as part of our supplementary data collection, we sent out a survey to both WPI and AUS students to understand who knows what about open innovation and how involved students actually are with innovation efforts. With over 270 responses, we found that only 6% understood the details of open innovation, what it actually was, and only 28% of respondents have worked on any open collaboration project with outside entities. And finally, only 24% of respondents utilize any WPI and innovation and entrepreneurship resources. We also found that 81% of respondents are interested in participating and learning more about open innovation and getting involved with projects with outside companies, universities, and communities.
In order to analyze the data collected during the interviews that our team conducted, we first transcribed each interview. Then we coded the transcriptions and applied a theme to different passages of the text. An example of this can be seen on the right, where highlighted areas of the transcription have each been coded and applied a theme. Finally, our thematic open innovation, a thematic open innovation network framework was created by our team. Our thematic theme framework for open innovation networks can be seen in the table below. The four major themes that were present in each of the open innovation models that we examined were communication, intellectual property, project selection, and existing network aspects. With the completion of our discovery phase, our team moved on to the ideation phase of our project. After the ideation phase was complete, our team had brainstormed four main sets of criteria that our prototype needed to solve. The first criteria that needed to be solved was interactive communication, which our team defined as fast response times to project proposals in order to get them off the ground sooner, opposed to letting them sit unbegun for longer periods of time. Direct communication between student-led teams or professors and project sponsors would be important for solving this criteria. The next criteria was IP management. Obviously, it will be important for our prototype to allow the individual working on a project to have the necessary resources to manage IP rights in a responsible and professional way. The third criteria that our team brainstormed that needed to be satisfied was impactful advertising. With proper showcasing of the prototype, more project proposals will be submitted and the maximum amount of individuals using the prototype will be had. Advertising is also a great way to get the community involved with using the prototype to see if student-led teams can take on a problem affecting the local area. The final criteria is inclusive operation. Our team defined this criteria as the need to welcome projects from all different organizations. Our team believed that our prototype should discourage no organization from submitting a project proposal about a problem that they deemed important.
During our prototype phase, we developed a list of features that should be implemented in a WPI Open Innovation portal. As previously discussed, we found that students were not able to find all of WPI's open innovation resources, since they were not accessible or advertised from one point. To help with this issue, our Open Innovation portal serves to unify all of WPI's open innovation resources into one location, as well as serving as a single point of contact for external entities. At the top of the portal, there are 6 menu items, which will be shown on all pages of the website to allow for ease of use. Notably, to satisfy our interactive communication and impactful advertising criteria, we have a networking tab where all users can talk about past, present, or future open innovation efforts. This aspect would be implemented with a third-party software such as Slack to allow for constant communication between nodes of different open innovation projects. Alongside this networking feature, we have space on the home page for news and announcements, where the various open innovation events can be advertised and information about the community can be shared to maintain inclusive operation and impactful advertising. To help with intellectual property management, we have a link to the WPI Technology Commercialization website, as well as access to sample joint development agreements and non-disclosure forms. As you can see on our next slide, our faculty directory is a location where any user of the portal can reach out to faculty members currently participating in open innovation. This allows for companies and other external entities to find the professor or faculty member who would be able to develop their project to its fullest, while forming a personal connection with the university and its open innovation endeavors. On the next slide, you can see the active projects directory, where the university's current projects are all available to explore in one place. These projects can include MPP and IQPs, as well as student-run projects or innovation problems, and projects proposed by external entities. This will allow for all of these projects to be available to be seen by any user of the website, and allow for all users to provide valuable insight and feedback into the inner workings of the portal.
So after producing and launching our prototype, for our final phase, the next steps would be figure out ways to solicit feedback and improve our network portal.
Some of the ways we plan to solicit feedback include receiving feedback from our portal feedback page, where participants can leave comments or concerns for the improvement of the portal. We also plan to send our report to our case study interviewees to get their input and any recommendation from their perspectives. We also hope to connect various campus offices and centers for their feedback with setting up the physical office and portal. And finally, we hope to receive feedback from our classroom peers involved in other IQP projects.
There are 3 key recommendations that our team believes would contribute to our proposed prototype's long-term success. The first is to keep evolving the layout of the actual portal as new suggestions are made and new features are added. This makes sure that it is kept operating as efficiently as possible. Second, our team recommends that an assessment be performed biannually on the portal to examine whether or not the collaboration efforts have increased. The last recommendation, and perhaps the most important one, our team suggests to make sure that the prototype remains open to all and that there is no shift towards catering exclusively towards one type of organization.
I would like to give special thanks to our advisors, Professor Joseph Doran and Arthur Futsitsis, as well as our interviewees, Dr. Curtis Abel, Spring Theory, MBTA, Cedar Worcester, and Honeywell. Any questions?
Great, thanks guys. Any questions?
Well, I guess I'll start. This is more of a personal question. I find it fascinating when we have mixed teams from two different universities, two different cultures. Can you talk about what you learned about each other? The differences in culture, do they matter? Do they not matter? Do you plan to maybe get together in person after COVID-19? What were your highlights of working together?
So it was really great having the opportunity to work with students from the AUS. And as far as differences go, I wouldn't say there were too many. It was actually kind of more fun seeing the similarities. You know, they're college kids just like us. I know when we met this past week discussing the presentation and stuff, Archie and Akshunya talked about F1, the racing, for, you know, almost like a half hour. It was awesome to hear them like connect on that level. And, you know, it was just a really great experience. We plan on maybe working on this project a little bit further after we're done with IQP. But yeah, so we'll see where it goes, but it was really great.
Likewise as well. I think it was a great opportunity for us at AUS. I think this was an extremely unique opportunity for us as well, because it's the first time we're working with someone outside of our university. And absolutely, it was probably the most fun part of this, you know, COVID kind of situation. Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely planning on working further and maybe hopefully publish a paper at the end of maybe next year or something. But absolutely, you know, kudos to my teammates at both AUS as well as WPI. All of us have done a really great job. So kudos to all of you guys.
Fantastic.
Okay, let me chime in. First of all, wow, outstanding. When we had the opportunity to talk, man, you all hit so many important points. First off, I would love to actually follow up and continue this open innovation conversation. I think this is a complex problem, as you probably have realized. So one of the questions that I have is, we had talked a little bit about it in the interview, and this is around kind of the collaboration part. And especially at universities, I would say actually, whether it's universities, industry, everybody has different incentives. And everybody's always operating in silos. If you go to the corporate world, operations has different incentives and goals, marketing has different goals, and it always causes problems. In universities, that happens in the same way. So I would just be interested in, and it's funny because we had talked deeply about, you know, just trying to get the word out about all the great resources that WPI has, but it's really difficult to get people to participate. And some of it is around time. Some of it is around, you know, just not knowing about it. And what were some of your aha moments in terms of how to break down those silos and to encourage and to inspire, you know, and a lot of it is, I think, around building that community. And because there's so many things going on and it's actually pretty complex. And so I would just love to hear just some of your insights, and how does that different, did you find any differences culturally as well? You know, that, I think that's another really important point, because you're dealing with communication styles, and just value systems. I would love to just hear a few comments about that.
Yeah, I can speak to that a bit. Part of the idea behind having this portal was that we all know that at AUS and WPI, there are tons of students who have this innovative mindset and want to pursue these endeavors. However, we found that perhaps sending out emails with just bulletins of different events going on perhaps might not be the best way to advertise those to these student bodies. Instead, by having a portal, you advertise with the knowledge that anybody who visits that is actively engaging and wanting to participate in that open innovation. So instead of a random notification popping up in their inbox, they're actively searching for those projects, and then you can advertise those to the students and advertise them in a way where you know that they want to participate in them. So instead of trying to get people to want to, you are appealing to those who already have that innate desire to innovate. And part of the breaking down those silos you talked about was that we found that trying to make this process as efficient and streamlined as possible would help with corporate participation and the ease of use from external entities, because it saves them resources from having to track down who to find to talk to and start working on these projects. And by having a more streamlined process, they can say, I want to do this project in collaboration with some students, get a new perspective on this issue, and go on the website, propose that project, and have a more immediate result instead of waiting around. And we can more streamline that timeline to help with resource management.
Right. If I may jump in, so I would like to just bring up one of the points that we had in our conversations with our sponsor Art. He brought up a great point when we were talking about bringing up incentives for both parties involved. So as he said that, when they're working in corporate and they're trying to attack like a very specific problem, most of the times in corporate, you don't have something known as brain power. Basically, you don't have anybody who specializes in that one specific kind of area. And so how do you combat this? So basically, you can find a specialist in that field at a university. Maybe a professor who's working in a very niche part of research, which might be applicable to their problem. And you go up to them and you say that we'll fund your project. So it works both ways. The corporate company, they get the incentive, as in they get an intellectual property in one sense of the word, that they get access to this new research, this new technology, which they can implement to further bring up their profits. And for the professor or for the researchers, it's also great incentives that they don't have to then go ahead and look out for research grants, as there, you have somebody as a big corporate sponsor who's willing to back you up on your research. So it works both ways. So it's like a win-win situation for both parties involved.
Thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to following up. Great job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. And I just have one comment before moving on, which is that, one of the things, this was a framework for sort of thinking about our own activities that really hadn't dawned on me. And one of the insights that I had from your project only happened about 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, in conversation with you, that in fact, it's a pretty interesting framework for us to sort of approach some of our I&E activities. And I know Curtis and I have had discussions about it as well. And so I echo Curtis's desire to continue the conversation with you, following up from this project. So,
Joe,
thanks a lot, guys. Oh, sorry, Karen, go ahead.
I just want to give a special thanks to Art Futsitsis. Joe and I have been talking with Art for a while. He's a very dedicated alum of WPIs. And Art, thank you for taking the time. We really, really appreciate your help.
Thank you. And it was a really great experience for me to work with this team. I really enjoyed working with all of them. They're very bright people, and they got very enthusiastic about the topic itself. I could see that they really dug deep and they found a lot of interesting ideas. And I must say, I was very impressed by the presentation, and especially by this network portal that you're talking about. I think it's a great idea. The only thing that I would like to highlight again here is secrecy is a very big thing when it comes to innovation. So there has to be some kind of a system to protect ideas and protect the inventor, basically. Otherwise, people will be very hesitant to share ideas. So that's my final comment. And thanks to all of you. I mean, I really enjoyed working with you, and I think best success in the future.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Art.
Thanks, Art.
Yep.
All right. Great. Well, thanks, guys. And now let's move on to the fire protection team.
All right, this is the screen sharing. All right, so we're the team that was working with our sponsor Jensen Hughes on high-rise facade fire safety.
Hi everyone, my name is Will Christ. I'm a third-year civil engineering student.
I'm Sam Prizzuti, and I'm a third-year chemical engineering student.
And I'm Joey Yip, and I'm a third-year civil engineering student.
So here are the presentation contents that we're going to bring you through today. So what is the problem? Aluminum composite panels, abbreviated as ACP, are cladding that is used on high-rise buildings. Cladding refers to the component of a building that is on the exterior and does not provide any structural value, but also provides protection against the elements. One of the drawbacks of using ACP is that it is highly flammable, and this is particularly a problem in high-rise buildings because the amount of time that it takes to evacuate a building, but also the difficulty in firefighting hundreds of feet above the ground.
So to put into perspective the usage of ACP, currently in 2018, the global market price for ACP was about 5.33 billion USD. And from then it was projected to grow 63% by 2026 to 8.71 billion USD. And also in Australia alone, there are over 3,000 buildings that use ACP as building cladding. And the density of that is pretty similar in many major cities.
So why is ACP used? ACP is a cost-effective material, is easy to maintain, and is also aesthetically pleasing. On the left-hand side, you can see an enlarged image of the panel. It is composed of two aluminum sheets that sandwich a polyethylene core. That polyethylene core is why aluminum composite panels are so flammable, and they are especially flammable if that polyethylene core is low density. When it's exposed to flames, the aluminum sheets begin to delaminate and expose the polyethylene core, further fueling the fire.
So here in this project, we had to take a very large goal problem and condense it into two key objectives. The first being taking the project and defining the risks and benefits associated with ACP and compare it to other materials that might be used in the industry. And second, to discuss the social implications related to high-rise fires.
The primary methodology that we used for the majority of the project was grounded theory, which to explain it, in the beginning, we develop a starting theory based upon our background research. And from there, we go into theoretical sampling and pick certain people to interview. And from there, we collect our data. In this case, it was in the form of interviews, and code that data to develop a new theory. From that new theory, we decide a new set of questions and who to interview next. And the cycle continues until we have a defined grounded theory.
So from our interviews, we found many alternative materials. Those include solid aluminum sheets, glass, exterior insulating and finishing system, abbreviated as EIFS, and also alternative cores used for ACP, including mineral core and aluminum honeycomb core. The second thing from our interviews was a risk assessment tool, which associates the risk of using different cladding materials on high-rise buildings. The last of our technical findings were testing standards, including FM 4880, 4881, 4882, and 4411. 4411 is a particularly new standard, which looks at the flame propagation, which looks at the cavity walls and how they affect flame propagation. On the right-hand side, you can see a test of NFPA 285 being conducted. In order to conduct the test, a 2-story wall assembly has to be made of the material of choice and then lit on fire and measure the flame propagation.
For some of our interviews, we had the opportunity to meet with people who are involved in high-rise fires that use ACP. And some of the findings that we got from those were they discussed property damage. And one of the major things that stood out to us was the fact that most of the apartments in some of the buildings that were affected by the fire had massive property damage and massive losses. Another interesting find was that even after several years after the fire, there are ongoing lawsuits about who was at fault, who gets what sort of compensation, and there's no set, really defined court cases on ACP fires. We also found that they had an aversion to high-rise living after the fact, not only because of the fire risks, but because they don't know what sort of materials are used and how safe it is. They explained to us that they simply would not live in a high rise again and instead would live in only low rise buildings due to fire safety risk.
So continuing with the social findings, so the code portrayal, members of the general public along with owners of buildings and developers tend to see fire codes or codes in general as a hindrance that incurs extra costs to go with compliance. So also simply checking off boxes on a list just to meet standards is also very dangerous. In one of the interviews that we had, there's actually an anecdote of a professor that would assign a project to students often, and it would be to create a code compliant building that was actually extremely dangerous. And also following with the codes as well, there's always going to be a person who is willing to take a chance and, for example, grilling or smoking, and they'll have the mindset of just this one time and unfortunately cause a dangerous situation for other people. So there should also be a focus on predictions. There is a current lack of consideration or forward thinking regarding potential fire scenarios or usages of buildings and materials that may lead to fires in the future. Buildings and safety systems need to be properly maintained in order for maximum safety. So going through and following through with preventative maintenance is also very important. And there's currently also a lack of traceability and transparency involved with building materials. So from when it leaves the factory and arrives at the laydown area at the construction site, there's a potential for documentation or labeling to be inaccurate or wrong, leaving the possibility for unequal substitutions to be made. People don't know what products are being installed in actuality on the site, and there's no real way of verifying material or identifying for retroactive testing in the future.
So for the coding of our results, we took important quotes from our interviews, found the similarities, and put them into 6 different categories and laid them out onto this continuum. On the left-hand side, we have the technical aspects, while on the right-hand side, we have more social aspects. Cladding materials and testing standards fall well within the technical aspect, while public portrayal and societal problems are under the social aspect. In the middle, there are fire scenarios and fire safety, which are a combination of both technical and social problems.
So once we had completed all of our data collection, we established our findings and coded our data, we came to our final grounded theory. Then following, we have the main 4 points. The first one being all materials must work together in unison, meaning that all the materials have to work together to ensure fire safety. If one material is compromised, then it could cause a problem for the entire assembly. Second one is code, standards, and testing procedures must be reliable and thorough. These standards and procedures must come from reliable sources and be thorough enough to establish secure fire safety for use in high rises. Next are the codes and standards, which must be fully understood by the engineers and designers. Once the engineers and designers fully understand these fire safety codes, they are able to connect them in ways and allow for adequate fire safety. As Joe previously mentioned, it is possible to create buildings that follow all fire codes and standards, but still have them be immensely dangerous. To fully understand the codes and standards would mean to establish immense fire safety. And finally, predictions must be made of future fire scenarios. Although many organizations do this, there are still some that struggle with that aspect and could have more preventative thinking rather than reactive thinking.
So we've come to these main conclusions. Engineers and designers need to focus on why the fire safety codes and standards are there and really understand the role of code compliance as a key element in the utmost responsibility of holding paramount public safety, as well as following the standard of using the does it make sense kind of judgment and exercising judgment during engineering decisions and not being afraid to call out concerning information or areas as it arises. The low density polyethylene is one of the particularly dangerous varieties of ACP, which like other materials can be used improperly, leading to disaster. And throughout the world, there are large variants in fire codes. So they vary from city to city, state to state, country to country. So there's a lot of wiggle room there. And yeah.
From these conclusions, we're able to create recommendations on how to handle ACP usage in the future, as well as handle fire codes. The first one would be to halt the use of low-density polyethylene in facade paneling. The low-density polyethylene has been proven to be a major cause of the severity of some of these fires. And there are newer, more fire-safe ways of creating ACP, which can prevent these major catastrophes from happening. The second recommendation is to establish a way to ensure adequate fire codes are followed throughout the US and globally. As for many nations, fire codes are followed by a state by state or province by province. Follow state by state or province by province. There have been talks in the past for the US to create an organization to help ensure that adequate fire codes are being followed nationwide by the International Fire Code as well as the NFPA, but those talks have fallen through. But it has proven that there is a path for the possibility of that to happen.
So continuing with the recommendations, in order to remove the room for inadequate material use or substitutions, materials must be better managed and labeled for tracking and record keeping throughout the supply chain and installation process. This leaves potential area for emerging technologies such as building information modeling that can tie in with this kind of information. And
as well as there should be encouragement for excellence and innovation in the field of installing and speccing ACP to lead to improved safety of occupants, people during the process, and the end users of the project. So anyway, there we've reached the conclusion of our presentation. We'd like to give special thanks to Joseph Dwarn, our project site advisor, Aaron Vanny, our project advisor, and our sponsor, Jensen Hughes, as well as all the numerous industry professionals and professors, some of which at WPI that we've interviewed during this project. Without them, we couldn't have gotten the insight that we needed on this project. And they really did a good job explaining to us the whole importance of excellence in engineering and holding paramount public safety. So there you have it. Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. I'm going to open this up to questions. Anybody have any questions for the fire team?
Okay, I'll do it again. I'll start off. Guys, can you please go back to slide 12? So I've had the privilege of working with the FPE department at WPI since 2008 and help build the lab. I do the fundraising and alumni relations for FPE. So I have a fair bit of knowledge. I think it's fascinating. You all did a fabulous job. So if you were to take this slide and go country to country and score where everybody is, because the regions, the nations, the countries are so different, as you stated, with codes. Codes are just so critical. So I think a continuation, this is just my idea, and maybe you've thought of it already, to extend this project would be to develop a country by country fire code, or fire safety index, rather, a fire safety index. So in Dubai, we know about the high-rise ACP issues. In England, there was I think it was called Grenfell fire.
Grenfell, yep.
Yeah.
Grenfell, yes.
And then in China, they have all kinds of fire issues, the big explosion in Tianjin. In India, the shanties, they're so close together. So just to go country by country and see where all of these factors come into play to develop a fire safety index, I think would be absolutely fascinating. So great job. And is anyone from Jensen Hughes on the call?
I see Aaron. Aaron, are you there?
Aaron, thank you
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you. We so appreciate this. Jensen Hughes has been a huge supporter of WPI's FPE program for many, many years. And what you're doing in the Middle East is absolutely fascinating. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a great experience. The three guys were amazing to work with. They surprised me on this presentation because I gave them all the information I had, and they came back in this presentation and delivered even more than I would have expected. So it was amazing to see them pull together all the interviews, and they probably surpassed most of the market here in their understanding of ACP. So I'm very proud of them, and it was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Thanks so much to the team here. I just maybe one final question is, compared to where you started, like thinking about the experience of doing this, right? What were maybe some of the bigger surprises, the things that you might have been ignorant about at the onset that you now at the end are feeling, if not expert, but a lot more knowledgeable?
Probably just how big of a problem fire safety is worldwide, really. It's a very open field, I would say. There's still a lot of fire safety concerns worldwide. We've made huge progress, but it's really a never-ending battle, I feel. And I feel like there's a lot more that we could do, like Karen said, with this project. And honestly, in the future, I would be happy to expand upon this more. And probably the field is very interesting as well.
Joe or Will?
Well, yeah, so in part of this project, it really took into perspective fire safety as a whole and kind of removed the whole sense of remoteness to the risks. I was looking around researching, and it turns out that there was a relatively recent building on the Boston waterfront that had at least some element of ACP to it. There was one in New York City as well. And really tying in with fire safety and codes and everything, you can have all the enforcement in the world, but it ultimately comes down to the human aspect and making sure that people aren't taking those unnecessary gambles trying to get past with something one time and metaphorically shake hands with danger and cause a situation for everybody. So yeah, the sense of remoteness definitely it's not there anymore. It's one of those things that you kind of think of and you're like, wow, it could happen anywhere.
Will, anything to add?
Yes, to kind of like piggyback, I would say like I was just surprised that, especially that anecdote about how you can have this completely fire compliant building, but then still be, something that's dangerous to the occupants. That really that took me by surprise, because before I was just thinking like the codes were something to prevent something like that from happening, but that can still happen under fire codes. I was surprised about that.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, guys, and thanks again to you, Aaron, and everyone at Jensen Hughes. We really, really appreciate you working with us on this.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Look forward to more.
Likewise.
All right. Bye.
All right. Moving on, we have the carbon capture team.
Ready, guys? Yep. Alrighty. And the screen is being shared? Okay. Well, then I'll get started. Hello, we are the WPI Carbon Capture and Sequestration team. Our project focuses on CCS and its viability in the UAE compared to other forms of renewable energy. Starting with our project introduction, we began with some background research. We wanted to understand the main causes and effects of climate change, the main innovations and current state of renewable energy, as well as understand the fundamentals behind carbon capture and sequestration technology. We also wanted to be able to connect this information back to the United Arab Emirates. After that was our methodology, which involved academic research, interviews with industry experts, as well as in-depth data analysis. This analysis led us to our discussion and our findings, which centered around 5 main themes and major takeaways. And these themes and takeaways led us to our conclusion. Beginning with who we are, my name is Patrick Eaton. I'm a 3rd-year computer science major at WPI.
My name is Pedro Cintrón. I am a 3rd-year chemical engineering student.
My name is Bryce McHugh. I'm a 3rd-year electrical engineering student.
Other members of our team include Artemis Mahmoudzadeh, Nasser Rizk, and Suad Elmi from the American University Sharjah. Our supporting cast includes our sponsor, Arthur Fitzitsis, who is an alumni of WPI and is an employee of Honeywell, currently based in Bahrain. And our sponsor is Joseph Dyron, professor at WPI. Now coming to the main issue that we are trying to address. Climate change is an existential issue that affects every human being on the planet. Fossil fuel use is rising, and we need to limit our emissions. With the rising use of fossil fuels is the rising emission of various pollutants that poses an existential threat to all of humankind. Our background research sought to understand the fundamentals behind CCS. We first wanted to understand the core concepts behind CCS technology. Pictured here is the Sask Power Boundary Dam in Canada, a coal plant that utilizes CCS technology. One of only 2 industrial CCS plants in the world, we looked at it as part of our research to understand CCS technology as a whole. Where renewable energy focuses on changing the source of our electricity, CCS targets the emissions themselves. This process has three main factors: capture, storage, and utilization. Beginning with capture, there are three main forms to do this. Pre-combustion involves removing carbon from a fuel source before it is burned. While this sounds nice in theory, it's extremely energy intensive and has only been successfully performed in labs. Post-combustion is the most viable of the three, and it is what is in use in the Sask-Power Boundary Dam. This involves removing carbon dioxide and other pollutants from exhaust flue gas using either a chemical solvent or a physical permeable membrane. And finally, there's oxy-fuel combustion, which involves burning the fuel in a pure oxygen environment before performing post-combustion carbon capture. The burning in an oxygen-rich environment promotes a cleaner combustion process and reduces the number of pollutants that need to be removed in the capture process. Now, once carbon has been captured, there's the question of what to do with it. The first option is carbon storage. This takes two main forms: oceanic and geological storage. Geological storage involves using emptied aquifers and oil reserves to pump CO2 deep underneath the rock and sealing it in the Earth's crust. This can be done this cannot be done with pressurized CO2 because CO2 under pressure would want to escape back into the atmosphere, posing great issues to the environment. So there is a limited amount of space that we can use. Oceanic storage is similar to geological storage, but involves pumping CO2 deep beneath the seabed. And because of the challenges posed by the ocean, there are a number of issues with this process as well. Another form of dealing with carbon is carbon utilization. There are a number of technologies that are coming to surface recently, and there are two main factors that we looked at to identify the viability of carbon utilization technologies. The first of which is that it must be permanent, not releasing CO2 back into the atmosphere. And the second is that it must be sustainable. The process cannot be so energy intensive that it involves burning fossil fuels to make the capture and utilization possible. One of the technologies that we looked at is that carbon dioxide can be converted back into a form of burnable fuel, but the burning of this fuel would then release the carbon again into the atmosphere, which negates the purpose. Enhanced oil recovery is another form of carbon utilization, which couples utilization with geological storage, pumping CO2 into a mostly empty oil reserve to extract the remaining oil that still exists in cracks and crevices. While this is a nice form of getting your money's worth for geological storage, it further encourages the burning of fossil fuels, which further perpetuates the issue of climate change. Finally, there is a method of converting CO2 into a form of plastic. And while this is both permanent and sustainable, it is on such a small scale that by itself it would not have a major impact. Finally, we wanted to look at how this applies to the United Arab Emirates and compare it to their current carbon reduction goals. And in this research, we also discovered that the UAE resides in what is called the solar belt, which is a region of around the Earth's equator, which has the most consistent and highest year-round exposure to solar energy. Up next, Pedro will discuss our plan.
So our methodology is known as our plan, and it was focused on developing how we are going to conduct research, who is our audience for this research, and what are we focusing on for these interviews. To start, we discussed the main topics we wanted to receive data for. This included understanding the implementation of carbon capture and sequestration systems and understanding how CCS systems fit into a larger emission reduction strategy. We broke this down into three categories: criteria, guide, and interview. Firstly, we will discuss the criteria. So our criteria required us to break down the problems even further. To narrow which points of views would be critical to answering these research questions, we focus on topics regarding engineering, economic, social, and political aspects. Secondly, going on to our interview guide, we had this criteria in mind. The strategy to conduct research was through interviews, and for this, we came up with a research guide. The research guide was our team's guideline to list the important topics which were mentioned in the criteria. It also served as the arrangement of these aspects to satisfy the problem we were trying to solve. Finally, to execute this process, we conducted 6 interviews with experts from different fields that satisfied our criteria, and these interviews were recorded and transcribed. After describing our plan, here's what we found. This chapter can be described with 2 questions. What were our research results, and what do these results represent? Our data analysis is able to go into more detail on how we collect this data. So our method to extract data from the interviews was, once they were transcribed, used an annotating software in Vivo. This software was very useful for when our team was gathering themes that supported different ideas in interviews. We also used Google Docs when we encountered technical difficulties within Vivo. Our next focus was thinking about, how do we find this data? This question is important for our data analysis, and this thinking was a guide for us to gather themes as codes. These codes were important for our understanding how CCS and renewables play a role in stopping the global problem of climate change. The codes will also be described further in the framework.
All right, so moving into the framework. After we gathered all of our information together, we took that data and built an explanatory framework around it. So our framework can be broken down into 3 separate parts: social and political, technical, and contextual factors. So each one of these parts is supported by a group of themes that were common throughout each of the transcripts. So going into social and political, it was supported by awareness, adaptation, and government support. So we coded anything as awareness, talking about raising awareness about climate change, raising awareness about these technologies, renewables, and carbon capture and sequestration. We coded anything as adaptation, talking about how we can change our lifestyle, how we can change our, how we can change business system and other systems around reducing our carbon emissions. So moving into government support. So government support was, we coded any text talking about the regulatory environment necessary for carbon capture and sequestration and renewable energies. We coded anything talking about subsidies to make these technologies more profitable and more appealing to businesses wanting to use them. Excuse me. Moving into the technical aspect of the framework. So this part of the framework describes how actually these systems would work mechanically. So efficiency is somewhat self-explanatory. This is talking about how exactly these technologies work. We coded anything talking about how efficient they are, what their benefits are, why you would pick this form of carbon capture over, say, a different form. Sustainability is also somewhat self-explanatory. So sustainability is the need for these systems to be sustainable, in that you can't be putting more energy into these systems, generating more carbon than they're taking out, right? So inefficiency we used to talk about any of the downsides to these specific technologies. New technology is also, again, somewhat self-explanatory. This is talking about any new technology to address these inefficiencies specifically. So moving into the contextual themes, these are global themes that affect the entirety of the implementation of carbon capture and sequestration. This is cost, which is monetary and energy cost, and synchronization or parallel, which is the idea that these carbon capture technologies are going to have to work with other technologies such as renewable energy. So moving into our discussion chapter, what exactly does this framework mean? Well, it means a couple things. So starting with the social and political aspect of our framework, this means that for these technologies to be viable, it's going to require a certain amount of government support. This will require either a regulatory environment or subsidies that make businesses actually want to invest in these technologies over, say, fossil fuels. It also means, to a certain extent, raising awareness about climate change and the environmental effect of both how businesses function and our lifestyles. Now, moving into the technical side of what this means for what our framework means for the technical aspect of carbon capture and sequestration, this is where things start to fall apart for carbon capture and sequestration, is that, for one thing, in its current state, it's not really viable. There's a lot of inefficiencies with the current technology that need new technology that's currently being researched to make it really in any way market viable. There's only about probably 2 actual sites that use carbon capture and sequestration in the world, compared to numerous that use renewable energy. And it's not like the carbon capture and sequestration technology is new. We've known about at least the scrubbing, right? Post-combustion scrubbing for decades at this point. Another thing that you have to take into account with the technical side is that you have to have a site available to store the carbon. And this becomes a major problem in that you have to have specific geological conditions. You also have to, if you're using the geological storage, you have to have ocean access if you're doing oceanic storage. Not to mention the fact that you also have to maintain these sites to make sure that the carbon doesn't leak out into the environment and cause potentially devastating effects. So moving into the contextual themes, and what this means for the overall implementation of carbon capture is that, for one thing, it's just not really cost effective. Like if you have enough money to invest in either renewable energy or carbon capture and sequestration, it's just easier to invest in renewable energy. Renewable energy does have its own engineering issues that have to be worked out. But the problem is that in its current state, carbon capture and sequestration is just not scalable. It's not really viable. You need a site to store it. You need to have some way to compensate for the power loss, right? Whereas renewable energy, you just need to set it up. And there's many different models of how to do it all across the world. Whereas for carbon capture and sequestration, there are two. And I think another thing that's really important to think about is that where the research is focused in carbon capture and sequestration is just to make it viable. Whereas the research into renewable energies is not to make it viable. It's already viable. The research is just to make it more effective. So continuing with the framework discussion, Pedro?
Yeah, so for CCS, this technology could be installed on major natural gas plants in the UAE, but drawbacks include the high installation and operating costs. They reduce the efficiency of the plants, and there are limited options for carbon storage in the UAE. Moving on to renewables and solar, there has been a discovery in potential drawbacks that solar power has, especially in the UAE desert environment. These drawbacks can be mitigated since the UAE exists along the solar belt, a region along the Earth's equator that has the highest year-round exposure to solar energy. The geological benefits of the UAE include that it has lots of undeveloped desert land, which is cheap. Searching further for ways to overcome the drawbacks with installing solar panels can lead to development in more renewable energy sources. The UAE is also adjacent to the Persian Gulf, giving them access to the potential for consistent offshore wind production. When compared to renewables, the issues that arise are offset because, as explained in what the framework means, renewable energy is more cost efficient, more mature technology, and already proven at scale. CCS doesn't seem like the most valuable option for the UAE for these reasons. For future plans and policy, we understand that CCS may still have a place in the short term. We suggest a strong focus on renewable infrastructure development to push the nation's energy sector forward. CCS can work in conjunction, but not as the main solution. This technology can be installed on peaker plants, which would only turn on when renewables are unable to meet demand. A peaker plant functions as a substitute for power when renewables like wind turbines receive low wind and when solar panels don't receive the desired sunlight to generate power. Finally, the government should create subsidies for businesses for the use of renewables with CCS, garner support for the investments of these technologies from companies and communities to help further the process of cutting emissions.
All right, so to conclude our project, this is not to say we should totally throw out carbon capture and sequestration. We're going to need to use it. Right? Climate change is an existential problem, and we're going to have to do everything we can to stop it. However, in its current state, carbon capture and sequestration is ill-equipped for large-scale use. If you can switch to renewables, you should. Anything after should have some form of carbon capture and sequestration attached. We would like to give special thanks to our advisor, Professor Dorian, our sponsor, Mr. Fuzitsis, and the AUS students, Artmiz, Nasser, and Suad. Thank you guys so much. Without your help and hard work, this project would not be possible. Thank you. Are there any questions?
That's great. Let's open it up to questions.
Yeah, hi, can I just add some comments? And yeah, I work with this team and, you know, they've done a great job. And I think the point of the project was like because we all know about the climate change. We hear it on the TV all the time, and it's a very well-known problem. But the devil is in the details, right? And looking into the individual, the material balance, let's say, of carbon dioxide and how that accumulates in the atmosphere, I think it's a very important concept to understand. And I believe that this team has done a great job analyzing the problem and getting sensitized to the details. Yeah, I agree with the conclusions. Basically, CCS, carbon capture and storage, needs to be a temporary solution because from the current time until we are completely on a renewable energy, there is going to be a gap, and during that gap, we cannot keep pumping CO2 in the atmosphere. So we need to have like a methodology to remove it, right? And that's what this project was about, to try to see what kind of technologies exist out there that can remove carbon. It's not a long-term solution, but it's something that needs to be done. And I think there is a lot of complexity in the technology. It's not economical. The only thing that will make it economical is basically the governmental subsidies or the penalties. So right now in the US and Europe, I think there is a penalty of $35 per metric ton of CO2. And if somebody can capture CO2 and get rid of it and pump it into the ground for less than $35 per ton, then you have a winner here. So the bar is pretty low, right? So, and I think the technologies are there. Don't underestimate the technical genius of mankind, especially of engineers like us, like from WPI and the University of Sharjah. I mean, there is going to be we're going to come up with solutions, and there are a lot of research going on right now. And like I said, in the next 30, 40 years, we need to, until 2050, when we're going to be carbon neutral, I think we need to start implementing these technologies. Otherwise, we'll never get there. So finally, I would like to say I enjoyed very much working with the team. Very thoughtful and very good. We had some very good discussions, and I think this is a great presentation. And I would like to wish the team all the best in the future.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
It was great, Art. Thank you.
I had a couple of comments, if that's okay. First of all, I really love the technology on your presentation. It was very, very well done.
Professor?
Yeah,
no, I really
I second that. So they used a software called Prezi. And I told them that this is the first time I've ever seen a Prezi be effective. So they changed my mind on it as well.
Really love it. And just a couple of big questions. What is happening in the Middle East, in the UAE, to invest in renewables and solar energy? Are they dragging their feet because oil is still, their major commodity, or are there governmental plans to have X number of wind turbines and X number of solar panels by a certain year?
At least in the UAE, they are trying to move away from oil, which makes sense in an economic standpoint, because if you have just a almost entirely resource-based economy, if you're very vulnerable to fluctuations in the price in that resource. There is actually multiple projects within the UAE. There's one called it's called Masdar. Basically, it's like an entire city only powered by renewable energy. So there is enthusiasm to invest in these new technologies, and it's really just, I mean, there is like the idea that you want to invest in these technologies because you're hoping to save the planet, but they're also renewable energy is just economically, it makes a lot of sense, especially compared to, say, fossil fuels, because for one thing, they're renewable. They won't ever really run out. So you never have to really worry about, oh, we're going to have to start importing this fuel from this other place and be subject to how they name their price. Not to mention also, like, you know, and for like energy security wise, it's just a good investment. And this is why we're looking into carbon capture and sequestration, is because theoretically, if carbon capture and sequestration was viable, you could use it to continue using fossil fuels. But the issue is that carbon capture and sequestration doesn't look like it's going to be viable really anytime soon, which is why renewable energy is kind of taking place. And it, almost everywhere in the world, that there's a growing rise and a trend towards renewable energies.
Bryce, how do you spell the name of that city in the UAE? That sounds fascinating.
Masr. Yeah, it means
Masra?
It means source in Arabic.
That might make a good future project.
Or vacation spot.
Yeah, true. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna do the thing that I've been doing on most of the team projects now, and I actually just you know, for each of you, just a couple of things about reflecting back on the process, where you were at when you started this project, where you are now, and you know, thinking about the topic, thinking about the working together as a team, thinking about all of those things, you know, reflecting back, like, what are some of the things that really stand out to you?
Working as a team online definitely has some challenges. It is kind of yeah, it does take some getting used to because it's kind of difficult to meet with your team, especially when you're not in person, because you have to get in contact.
How about in terms of your own education on this topic?
Oh, it threw me into a slight existential depression, but you know.
Yeah, we conducted interviews with people who have been involved in climate change for a lot longer, and kind of the fact that they've been talking about needing to do this for so long and yet almost nothing has been done just kind of gives you this sinking feeling of, wow, we might be a little bit late to the party here. And piggybacking off what Bryce said, I mean, yeah, it is really difficult to kind of get into a groove. I mean, these are people that I've been working with for 2 months now, and I've never met them in person.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like interesting that as we were researching, we learned a lot about what carbon capture and like the renewable energy and how all these technologies like compare to having the same goal of solving climate change, right? And I just find that doing all of that research and discussing all of that remotely, and also at the same time just being able to understand this topic deeply, I thought it was like a good learning experience.
That's great. All right, thanks guys.
Thanks, Professor.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
All right, and last but certainly not least, it's our team desalination.
All righty. Hello, everyone. This is our policy study of the desalination in Sharjah, UAE. This is our team. My name is Sophie, and I am a third year studying mechanical engineering.
My name is Robert, and I'm a third year studying computer science.
My name is Sawyer, and I'm a third year studying robotics engineering.
And my name is Caitlin. I'm a third year studying mechanical engineering.
We also worked with Zara, Mariam, and Ruba from the American University of Sharjah. This is our agenda for the presentation. We'll be starting with our introduction, moving into our background, then our problem statement and objectives, and finally methods, findings, and policy brief, and then conclusion. As an introduction to this problem, arid countries use desalination due to lack of fresh water. Sharjah is one of these places, and they have limited groundwater and almost no rainfall throughout the year. Desalination is the process of turning seawater into potable fresh water that can, and without it being regulated, it can be harmful to the environment. We're working with CEWA for this project, and they are a governing body responsible for providing water, electricity, and natural gas to the residents of Sharjah.
In order to better understand our project, we have provided a brief overview on the Arabian Gulf, desalination, and brine. So Sharjah is located near the Arabian Gulf, also known as the Persian Gulf, with a mean depth of 35 meters. It's a shallow estuary. That's where freshwater and saltwater meet, and the Gulf connects to the Strait of Hormuz, which flows out into the Arabian Sea. The salinity is around 38 to 42 practical salinity units. The average of an ocean is usually 35. This high amount is due to the high evaporation and the low rainfall in the area. For economics, most people know it provides most of the world's oil. But before that, they lived a nomadic lifestyle with fishing and pearling. And now they rely on aquaculture, which is fish farming. For pollution, the main things are oil and gas, sea traffic, urban development, and now desalination.
So as Sophie said earlier, desalination is a process that converts forms of water into their freshwater state. This is driven by many different technologies, which I will discuss with you in a moment. In the UAE, the freshwater supply is supported by three main sources: groundwater, desalination, and wastewater treatment. Groundwater sources generally supply the agriculture and forestry sectors, while desalination is responsible for supporting most of the UAE's potable resources. Some benefits of desalination are that it is culturally acceptable to drink when compared to recirculating wastewater, and it preserves existing non-renewable sources such as certain groundwater aquifers. But all types of desalination use very high amounts of energy, and they all produce brine, which needs to be disposed of. So I'll now go into some of the main desalination technologies that are being used today. Reverse osmosis is currently the global standard for seawater desalination. It is a membrane-based process that encourages water through a very thin membrane to remove the solutes. The latter two technologies are distillation-based processes, which mean they rely on a thermal source to carry out evaporation. Due to the thermal requirement, in many modern instances, desalination plants are seen in cogeneration configurations with combustion-based power plants. This works by having the desalination plant supply seawater and the combustion power plant supply heat for evaporation. This configuration allows plants to operate more efficiently than they would independently, and is one of the main reasons the UAE still relies on thermal-based facilities.
Brine is the main byproduct of desalination, containing many chemicals, including the pretreatment and cleaning chemicals and the metals from the corrosion of the pipes. Because of the chemicals' high salinity and high temperatures, it can be damaging to the marine environment if not disposed of correctly. One way to manage and dispose of it is zero liquid discharge, which is the water treatment process where water is recovered and the solid waste is disposed of or used for other resources. Some other processes are submerged disposal, surface water disposal, and solar evaporation.
To better hone in our project, we developed the following problem statement. Sharjah is dependent on seawater desalination to provide clean drinking water to its populations. So we are assisting CEWA with the implementation of a desalination policy by developing a policy brief. This policy will help the operational and economical efficiency of desalination plants, and regulation is necessary to promote desalination as a sustainable resource and to reduce the resultant impacts on the environment. So we set out the following objectives. We will identify desalination policies from around the world and then compare and contrast these policies through expert surveys. Once we have this data, we will develop a desalination policy brief for CEWA. And here's how we'll do so. We developed the following methodology. Step 1, we interviewed and identified experts here at WPI to form initial survey themes surrounding topics of desalination. Once we had these themes, we searched for policies and guidelines from around the world and translated a policy we received from CEWA with the help of our AUS students. Next, Step 3, these policies and guidelines were then sectioned by the themes and placed into surveys for data collection. Step 4, we then contacted over 500 experts in various fields to participate in our surveys. We also sent out a website, as you'll see on the right here, where they could view the surveys and learn more about our project. These surveys were analyzed for suggestions or recommendations once we got them back on the various themes. And step 6, the recommendations were used to develop a policy brief on desalination for SIWA.
So we will now discuss some of our findings and recommendations to SIWA that come from our final policy brief. First, this list of general desalination policy themes was made using keywords from the transcripts captured in the first round of interviews. These 7 themes were used to make our surveys and now operate as an overview for our following discussion of policy recommendations to SIWA.
One of our largest findings was the preference of reverse osmosis over distillation or thermal-based. As we can see on the graph on the right there, we asked experts to rank the negative environmental impact of distillation, and so a lower score is better there because we asked them to rank the larger negative impact. And then same for economic cost, we asked them to rank the larger or greater economic cost, and again, reverse osmosis scoring better there with a lower score. New advancements in RO have produced polymer membranes that can tolerate high salinity and temperatures, as one expert noted. And this is important because previously arid regions have pointed to the resilience of distillation technologies in high summer temperatures, but it seems like new advancements in RO have defeated this problem. And another large benefit is that RO can be linked to renewable energy sources, while distillation still relies on heat from thermal sources. Moving on to the economic impact, thermal desalination is much less energy efficient and is thus a greater economic cost. This is because energy costs money and it uses more energy, And as SIWA transitions to renewable energy, one expert noted that these distillation investments will become extremely poor economically. Lastly, in terms of economic impact, because thermal desalination requires an energy source, it inhibits the diversification of water and power sources, as Sori will expand on in a little bit.
In the long run, the choice of desalination can have an everlasting effect on the environment. Thermal processes produce discharge and brine that has more metal and is at a higher temperature. This in the long run will affect marine life and it will raise the seawater temperature around it. And if Sharjah wants to transition to a carbon neutral state, then we recommend transitioning away from thermal processes that will inhibit this progress.
We will now go over our recommendations for desalination facility input, the largest intake being the energy consumption of these facilities. Many regions are currently investing in nuclear power and natural gas to support their future energy requirements, but our experts suggested that these are not the most economically viable options. Nuclear facilities require very large initial investments and similar costs to decommission, while natural gas is still reliant on exhaustible resources and contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. Experts suggested investing in sustainable energy technologies, which offer many benefits over their non-renewable counterparts. Technologies such as solar and wind power encourage the steady development of infrastructure compared to the large investments required for combustion-based power. This allows for regions to set up a timeline based on their energy needs and their annual investment sizes, ensuring that by the end of this timeline, they will have a fully independent and sustainable energy infrastructure. Additionally, while using combustion-based power generation to support desalination, there comes a water and power nexus where both are codependent on exhaustible sources. Both desalination, because desalination requires very large supplies of energy, if combustible sources become scarce or are depleted, essentially both water and power sectors can collapse simultaneously. So yeah, for SIWA to secure a sufficient, reliable supply of low-carbon energy and water, which is from their SIWA vision for 2025, this dependency on fossil fuels needs to be reduced.
The next major input of desalination is the source water, and this requires frequent reporting. This can be done by implementing a process that evaluates the entire administration of the desalination plant, and that can be monitored by a regional water board that would set the limits for the capacities. Reporting should be on not only source water, but also effluent water, overproduction of water, and environmental safety, and that would allow the plant to collect evidence and take action that would lead to positive environmental impact rather than potential negative impacts along the way. Additionally, there should be further research on ship movement impact on desalination intake plants. This is because many large vessels travel near there and affect the source water quality, which then can potentially have a negative impact on the desalination plant. However, not much research has been done on this, and so more should be done to create proper regulation.
So when formulating a policy, brine should be a major contribution to this. The main investment we recommend is zero liquid discharge because it decreases the volume of brine. And when the volume of brine decreases, the cost of managing it decreases, and it's easier for facilities to follow government regulations. With the rest of the brine, we recommend submerged disposal. This is when you run pipes from the output down into the deep ocean water. And if you look on the right, you see the table. This was from CEWA's guidelines. We recommend that CEWA implement these guidelines because all experts agreed these are economically and environmentally positive, and they should be sampling. We recommend they sample these multiple days a week and collect data on marine life living near these facilities. This will reduce any catastrophes that may occur in the area.
So the second output from desalination facilities is, of course, the fresh water. Reverse osmosis and distillation are, in fact, very good at purifying water. This leaves the desalinated water to be slightly acidic without the minerals to balance out the pH. The result from this is that most contamination from desalinated sources occur externally, meaning the slightly acidic water can pick up contaminants from corrosion during its distribution. So to solve this, it needs to be targeted internally before the water ever leaves the facility. This can be done using remineralization, which is a great solution paired with desalination because it gives facilities full control of their output water quality. These minerals will rebalance the pH to not be so acidic and can even offer human health benefits. Some may say it even makes the water taste better. But standards for the output water quality still need to be created and met. Regions are sometimes seen using total dissolved solid ranges to regulate their water. But experts suggest that these guidelines are insufficient and that specific contaminants need to be targeted. With TDS ranges, because different contaminants have different toxicities, certain concentrations can be allowed through that could eventually affect human health. A cost and risk analysis of each possible contaminant needs to be done to choose which ones to monitor. Luckily, the World Health Organization offers an abundant amount of information on these contaminants and their related health concerns. Our recommendation is to use their guidelines as a basis to perform this cost and risk analysis or evaluation to decide which contaminants need to be monitored.
So using all the regulations we said above, we created a policy brief. It's 4 pages. It includes an abbreviated introduction, and the approaches is the method section. We also summarized all of our regulations in there with a conclusion. In conclusion, we hope that CEWA considers these recommendations when they formulate their own policy. We would love to see the policy implemented and monitored, as well as more research into shipping movement. And we would just first like to thank everyone for coming today and watching. And we want to give a special thanks to our advisor, Joseph Doran, our sponsors, Mayada and Walid, and our wonderful AUS students. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Are there any questions?
Hello, desalination team. This is Mayada Bardan talking. Well done. I enjoyed, listening to the presentation, and hoping that SEWA will really apply in the near future the policy framework. And not only SEWA, we need also to collaborate with other governmental utilities in Sharjah, like the municipality, like the environmental authorities, to apply and monitor the seawater quality nearby the brine outfall and nearby the freshwater intake. So thank you, and looking forward to go through the documents, and well done.
Thank you, Mayada.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mayada. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions or comments for the team?
I would like to apologize for sneezing.
The look on your face when you realized you weren't muted was one of the best things.
My webcam is not being turned back on.
I just have a couple of comments. First of all, Maeda, thank you so much. We so enjoy working with SEWA and the AUS students. Desalination is such an important project globally. I'm curious about, it's very expensive to do the desalination and the reverse osmosis, but how costly is it to do the remineralization?
So yeah, we weren't able to do a whole lot of research on that. We just know that it's a very good solution, and experts suggested that it is less costly than having to repair all the pipes during distribution, because we've done some research and found some instances in like Flint, Michigan, where you know the water leans too acidic and it can destroy an entire infrastructure pretty quickly. So our experts suggested to us that the cost of remineralization will over time, even out from preserving your infrastructure.
Yeah, so Flint, Michigan was actually brought up in one of our interviews. We had a discussion on it. So a lot of people don't know that it wasn't the water source having the lead in it. It was actually the water was too acidic, and with the old pipes, it corroded them and the lead got into the waters. And if you can see, the government had to spend millions of dollars funding the people and the public. So you can always tell the cost of adding minerals is much lower than trying to fix the problem later on.
Very good. Did you talk with Professor Natalie Farnay at WPI? She has a very interesting project regarding Flint, the Flint problem.
That's right.
Great job, everyone.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to ask you the reflection question, and thinking back through the experience. So what are some of the big things that you think you learned, or that you're ignorant about to start, and looking at where you are now?
I think for myself, I was a little bit ignorant about the urgency of and how important desalination is to the countries that require it. As we learned, SEWA and Sharjah has these desalination plants, and if they're inoperable for even a few hours, that can lead to a shortage in water within a few hours. So I think that it was really eye-opening to see the reliance on the different sources to get fresh water when there isn't enough groundwater or rainfall. And that's not something that I ever thought of living in a place with plenty of fresh water available to me. And I think it was super interesting hearing that side of it.
I think we're ready to go into business or like start a startup whenever it happens, because we had to push the surveys hard. We had 7 surveys and all of them were 15 minutes long, and getting people to sit down and not just open the survey, but start the survey and take it was definitely eye-opening how many emails we had to send.
Yeah, I'll say from my vantage point, it was wonderful to see the growth in that area of being willing to reach out to strangers repeatedly.
Joe, it looks like we got another customer coming our way.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Great. To me, I think the most eye-opening thing, I guess, was still having connection to the AUS students. Like, even though we weren't able to go to Sharjah, we were able to even just talk and hang out with them a lot, and they provided lots of insight. And even just talking about daily lifestyle, it was crazy to think how familiar both of our lives actually are. And I mean, I'm sure if we were there, we were able to experience it more, but it was still very eye-opening and fun to get to know these people. And I'm sure we're going to talk more after this project.
I think one of the largest things for me was, being a computer science student, I don't really get to interact with like environmental faculty or those sides of WPI often, but it was very eye-opening to see like just how much or how many resources we had here at WPI. And like we even missed some too. We're just learning now, right? So I think it's just pretty crazy like how many people there are and how helpful they were and like how deep their expertise goes. Even like beyond environmental faculty, we even spoke with some people in the humanities department on creating policy and how to get different areas of the world to regulate these sort of things, like a cost and economic analysis and things like that.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Well, thank you guys. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Well, all right. I mean, congratulations, first of all, to all of the teams. I mean, excellent presentations. Excellent presentations of excellent projects, excellently executed. I'm incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you starting in A term all the way through B. So thank you. I'd also like to say thanks to all of our project sponsors. Really, without you, this doesn't happen. So to all of you at SIWA, Art, Aaron at Jensen Hughes, thank you so much for working with us and giving such making it possible, giving real world projects for folks to work on. And actually, I'd really like to say thanks to Karen. Karen, you really helped make this possible under challenging circumstances to get these things off the ground, not only back last year, but also towards the end of the summer, and making sure that this was going to happen as successfully as it did. So thank you so much. Yeah.
My pleasure. And everybody did such a fabulous job.
Thanks. And thanks to Curtis, for spending, well, first of all, being a great co-advisor on the on the Third Eye team, but also being willing to answer questions to so many of the the project teams. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe, and just want to give a shout out to you. I mean, you've been an amazing partner to work with, and to the students, I think we should give him a big clap on the whether it's over the video or not. He's just an amazing partner, and you're not going to find much better than this.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for having really low standards and expectations that allow me to meet them. No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you, really, thank you sincerely. And so, with that said, I just, again, thanks so much to everyone. Can't wait to read these final reports, everyone, right? And we'll pull this all together in a way that we can deliver all of the project reports, the deliverables, everything to the project sponsors and be able to share that stuff widely. So thanks again. Thanks for everyone who came to watch, joining us throughout the morning, and have a great afternoon, or if you're in the Middle East, evening.
Stay safe, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Curtis. I will see you.
Thank you all. Thanks,
See
everybody.
you soon. Yeah, you guys.